All right, Yalecrest Neighborhood Council, good evening. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We are really honored to have Councilman Dan Dugan here, who is such a key support to our community. And we're very glad that he can be here for this key information. From the mayor's office, we've got Hannah Barton coming in, so welcome. We'll hear from her in just a couple of minutes. And our keynote speakers tonight are Brigham Daniels and his co-director of the Great Salt Lake Policy Project, Beth Parker. So we'll see her in just a few minutes. Just a couple of agenda items. We've also got Eric, who's going to give us a little update on parks right now. First off, I would like to share a message from a group of citizens who have organized since the traffic accident in front of UNT Elementary in 13th South a week and a half ago. This is a woman named Jessica Arch Loretta, and she is working to prioritize pedestrian safety around the school and has been working with the city over the last week and a half to think about some strategies. She created a flyer here. If this is something you have expertise in, something you're interested in, please grab a flyer. We'll have them on the table on the way out, and she will be a really important point person. Many of you know we had a similar incident around our other public school, Bonneville Elementary, a couple of years ago, and we worked really closely and tenaciously as a community, and I think made some very, very key safety improvements in partnership with Representative Dugan and the mayor's office and Robin. Yes.
3 weeks ago, a woman was also crossing at 900 South from 1300 East. She was in the crosswalk and hit by a motorist, not a vehicle, who was hit by the motorist truck vehicle. So just within this area, we seem to have problems with females getting in, whether they're children or whether they're adults. We have case after case after case of women getting run over by vehicles. So that's something to think about.
Key points. If this is something you'd like to participate or contribute to, please grab a flyer, and I know that we can get a powerful working group together. I also want to share briefly, as many of you know, Saturday was our Community Champions launch, the initiative that the city made possible almost a year ago with an incredible piece of funding. This is our Yalecrest map, and on it you will note all the orange and blue sticky notes. 55 champions are on this map, you guys. All of these people have committed to be the point person for their block and help people know about what we're doing as a council together, and more importantly, to let us as a council know what the highest priorities are for all of the members who live in our neighborhood. So every sticky note on here is the result of a year of talking, questioning, thinking, long conversations, short conversations, and we had the most incredible launch on Sunday. And I'm so proud of the many champions who are in this room and all of the incredible work we're going to have together in the years ahead. So that was a huge achievement, and thanks again to the mayor's office for that funding, and to all of our champions who are in this room. Raise your hand if you're a neighborhood champion. Guys. Next on the agenda, I think we'll have firefighter Amy come up and share some news with us, and then we have an update from board member about parks. Eric.
Am I supposed to stand? I'm sure.
You can stand right where I'm standing.
Right here?
Yes, yes.
Being that this is the month of February and that we have Valentine's Day around the corner, or for me, for several years, it was Single Awareness Day. The American Heart Association calls attention to American Heart Month. We're focusing on cardiovascular health and life-saving action. Heart disease and cardiac arrest remain to be major public health challenges and affects 350,000 people a year in the U.S. And survival rates are still low, and it's especially if no action is taken. When a person's heart stops, every second counts. CPR and use of an AED can sometimes double or triple that person's ability to survive this heart attack. Here in Salt Lake City, we have a good response strategy in order to help those that have suffered a heart attack, but we need your help. When a caller reports that there is a cardiac arrest, our 911 dispatchers will make sure and give you directions on how to do CPR. And they'll do that right over the phone. Early CPR and the use of an AED, which is an automated external defibrillator, will save lives, especially that AED. So there's 3 things that you can do if you see someone collapse and you suspect that a cardiac arrest has happened. Make sure and check their pulse. The radial pulse is often one that people go for, but sometimes it's a lot easier to feel the one right in your neck right here. Call 911 immediately, and with the help of dispatchers, you'll start CPR. And if you already know CPR or taken a class, get that started right away. And look and see if you can find an AED close by. Nowadays, we find them in more and more places. So when you're walking around, keep your eyes peeled to see where your AEDs are in your community. So those are the 3 different things. Call 911, start CPR, and get an AED. And we'll be on our way to assist you guys. Of course, the best approach is prevention. And so healthy lifestyle choices, working with your physician, and managing conditions like diabetes and cardiac issues will be your best option to try to stay free from having a cardiac event. The Salt Lake City Emergency Management Office has offered a CPR/push to survive class that you can look at, and I have a web address. Do you just want me to read it out?
You can read it out, and we can also put it on the website.
Okay, so it's https and then your semicolon link.slc.gov/give pulse. So that's an opportunity that you can take to maybe refresh your skills or learn how to do CPR. And then lastly,
Can I see that?
oh yeah,
And I'll put it in
okay,
as well.
it's right there.
Okay. And it is https://link.slc.gov/give pulse.
Give pulse.
Give pulse. Like pulse.
And lastly, I'll just give our run numbers that we've had in your community for this past month. We're Engine 10. We're also a hazmat station, so we also run hazmat calls. Our call volume for this month, or for last month, we had 57 fire calls, and we had 68 medical calls. And then our hazmat rig had 36 calls. And sometimes hazmat goes outside of our district as well. Are there any questions?
What station are you in?
Station 10. So we're off of Sunnyside and Arapeen, right next to the post office there.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Is that a typical number of calls per night?
That's typical. In the summer, especially July seems to be the busiest month. But that's typical. So, any other questions? Okay. Happy Valentine's Day.
You're on air. Looks like it's for
Yeah, so I'm Eric. I'm on the board, and I've been working the Laird Park issue. So a lot of you don't know there's been an organization that's been renting Laird Park for the last 2 years. If you live around there, it's an organization called Soccer Shots. It's a for-profit organization that's been basically renting the park every day of the week except Sunday. So the Parks Department has decided to reclassify some of the smaller city parks. And Laird Park is one of those. So they're going to have a type A, B, and C. And Laird is a type C. And so for the next 12 months, they're going to do a model the park. And the new rules for Laird Park is going to be an organization can only rent it for 3 days out of the whole week. So the other 4 days are going to be non-rentable. So if one organization goes in, they can rent it for 3 days, or an organization can rent for 2 days and someone else can rent it for 1 day. They've also limited the amount of time they can rent the park. They're going to make a determination between 2 and 4 hours per day. And they're going to limit the size to 25 people, and that's adults and children. So if you do live around Laird Park and you see abuse of that over the next 12 months, let someone on the board know. Just our information's all on the website, and we'll relay it to the city. So the city, it's a public park, and the city has a policy right now that public lands in the city can be rentable. So they can't just close the park off to people that want to rent it. And so they're going to look at to see if there's still abuse. The other thing is trash has been a concern around the park. The other is bathroom facilities. So there's been a lot of complaints about children who use the park have been using the back wall. Some of the people that live by the park, it's become a bathroom area. So if you do live by the park and you see it, don't take any pictures because it's going to cause a lot of problems with the police department. But let one of the board members know, and the city's going to start tracking issues on abuse, on bathroom overuse, and they'll revisit it 1 year from now. And then what they're going to do is try to either change the thresholds to less use or more use based upon what goes on.
And we've got a comment period where residents can comment directly to the Parks Department right now, right?
Yes,
right now.
You have until the end of the month. The problem was the comment period has been open for about 6 months, and they really received no feedback from the neighborhood. I was at the meeting. There was one other resident that showed up to the meeting that gave their input about the overuse or abuse of it, but it really is an issue.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of you live right around Laird Park. Yeah.
So just for clarification,
Hmm?
if an entity rents it,
Yes.
it's the whole park. I mean, they have the playground.
No, so that was a source of discussion, and the city hasn't finalized the rules, but supposedly it's going to be divided down the half, and the half that's the field is going to be the rentable piece, and then the playground and some of the tables, I think on the north side, is non-rentable. So that was a source of discussion.
When you say rentable, I'm so sorry
Yeah.
for clarification, are you talking about permitting or
Yep,
events?
that is
Oh,
correct.
okay.
So anyone in this room can rent the park. So you can rent it for a party, a family get together. Some people rent it for sports, specifically practice.
It's
3 days a week.
that it can be rented.
That is correct. And so they haven't determined if it's like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I think that's going to be it's going to be first come, first served. So it could be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday and stuff. So if there's anyone in this room, I don't know who does the 4th of July and some of the other movie nights, you might want to go in and rent it. It opens up Monday for the renters. So if you do organize some of those events, go in there and get in there before that organization gets in there.
And if it's easier to reach out to Eric because he's a familiar face, do go through the council and we'll.
Yeah, my name is right on the website down toward the bottom. It's the only Eric that's on the website. So shoot me a call. And then the other issue, I'll be giving updates in the future. I'm working on the streets because there's been all these discussions about speed bumps within the neighborhoods, a lot of other calming situations. And then we'll be getting some updates on the sycamore trees. There's a whole initiative in the neighborhood to save all the sycamore trees. There's some individuals working that, and I think we've got to get them here to give updates and stuff because the urban forestry department's working a lot of stuff in that area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Hannah, I think we're ready for you.
Great.
And I think we've got your slides.
You're so on it. Thank you. I was like joining the Zoom thing. Yes.
Full house. This is fun. Good turnout. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Hannah. I work in the mayor's office. And shout out to Station 10. They came to my house this month. Non-emergency. Super helpful though. Fire alarms were going off like every 5 minutes and we couldn't figure out why. So it was very helpful. Okay, sweet. Thank you. Okay, I'll just,
Oh, and if you can actually share it into this, sorry.
oh, smart. No, you're good. I guess I should do that first. If maybe I'll let you drive. Yeah, sorry. Okay, I don't have a super long update today, so I'll just jump into it. First, wanted to tell everyone that the mayor gave her State of the City address in January. It's a great speech if you want to watch it, just talking about kind of the things that the city accomplished in 2025 and things that we're looking forward to in 2026. This QR code will take you there. But I'll just talk about a couple of highlights in her speech. The first being Project Connect, which was something that we focused on in 2025 as a result of the public safety plan. I guess I'm not on camera. Here we go. And the public safety plan, as some of you might remember, is something that the mayor presented to state leadership as they were looking for a higher level of safety in Salt Lake City specifically. And so Project Connect was looking at the top 50 utilizers who are arrested most frequently and use other resources like our homelessness resources or even like the emergency department. And really taking the time to like meet those people where they are and talk about individualized solutions, recognizing that those high utilizers are just that, high utilizers, right? And ultimately, at the end of the day, require a lot of money and resources. So that program has been successful so far. 60% of those folks have seen a decrease in their arrest rate, which is great. So in 2026, we're hoping to just keep moving down that list of high utilizers now that we've worked with that top 50, continue working with those who still need help, but then move down to, the next batch of 25 or 50 people. The mayor also presented her vision for the city's civic center, which includes City Hall and the main library downtown between State Street and 3rd East, 4th and 5th South, looking at reusing or repurposing the Leonardo, which is no longer a museum. It gets used for our downtown Winters Farmers Markets on the weekends. But going to be repurposing that building for city offices, which is great, so that some public employees can work there. As well as kind of redoing that whole area of Library Square. For some of you who have been downtown for like our arts festival or Pride, you know that it's really hot, and not a lot of great places to sit and enjoy being outside. Washington Square obviously has like amazing trees, and lots of shade, but we want to kind of see that extend into Library Square just so it's a more usable green space for families downtown and for folks to kind of enjoy those summer events that the city puts on. And then lastly, the mayor talked about continuing to focus on housing affordability, and looking at all of the tools in the city's tool belt that we can use creatively to accomplish that. Looking at some programs to launch in 2026, specifically to focus on repairs for existing affordable housing, just to keep that on the market as much as we can. And then looking at locking in affordability long-term with deed restrictions, again, for existing affordable housing. We already do that for housing that's being built in the city, but want to retroactively look at and see how we can make sure that affordability is maintained as long as possible. So again, encourage you all to watch the speech. It's really great. Next, I want to talk quickly about the city's food microgrant program. I think this is our fourth year doing this program. It is a grant that exists just to increase access to fresh and healthy food in the city for residents like you if you want to start a garden and need some seed money to start that project, or even if you like want bees in your backyard, or if any of you are involved in larger organizations, there's also an organizational grant for up to $5,000 for those projects. So residents can get up to $250. It's a great way to get some money for your garden if that's something that you're into. If you have any questions, I can connect you with the person who runs that grant. And those applications are open until March 2nd. I'll just leave it up for a minute because someone's taking a picture. Okay. Next, I just have a couple quick updates from public lands. I know that they'll kind of extend staff here over the next coming months as there's like really big updates, but I just want to make sure no one gets like thrown off guard by anything crazy. Some of you might know that a CIP, a capital improvement project, was approved in Miller Park a few years back, specifically looking at repairing some of the masonry work in the park, which is from the 1930s, so it's historic, as well as looking at increasing the accessibility in the park, widening some of the trails, fixing some of the grading so that you can like actually push a stroller up it. And so some of that masonry work is going to start in the spring. It's not going to result in any closures, but you might see some areas that are coned off or like active work being done on that stone. And then they are looking at completing the rest of the CIP work, so that trail work in the fall. And they are potentially looking at a like 3 to 4 month closure of that area while they are doing that trail work. The reason that they're pushing it to the fall is because they want to, there's like some federal regulations about not disturbing migratory birds during the season where they need to lay their eggs and make their little nests. And that happens a lot in Miller Park, which is great. And so they don't want to disturb any of that. So if they wait until the fall, they can make sure that they are not doing any damage to the birds. And then just quickly on Sunnyside Park, as a recipient of GEO bond dollars, that final concept design for the park is done. You can view it on the Sunnyside Park website, which I'm happy to send or make sure it gets in the notes. And they're just working on construction documents to make that plan come to life. And they are still on track for that project to be done by June of 2027. So obviously still a long time to go, but it's in the works. And here's my contact information. Does anyone have any questions for me about these things or other city issues? Yeah.
You talked earlier about the plans for the old city library and talked about city employees getting space in there. Eventually, a lot of the reason Leonardo wasn't successful is because of failed infrastructure.
Yeah.
What's the plan for converting in public space?
Good question. I don't know all of the details, and I'd be happy to get your contact information and follow up with you. I do know that there are pretty significant expenses that it'll take to get the building usable, even just with the elevator and escalators. Those repairs are forthcoming, meaning like the parts have been ordered. And I think some of the parts are going to take 6 months to get here, which is pretty crazy. But I think there will need to be probably more ongoing solutions for like the long-term renovations. But I think there are some quick fixes that can be done to just get it to a place where it's usable as office space. So that'll be done.
Yeah, how long does the winter look?
Ooh, good question. I'll sit down and Google it and tell you when I find it. Thank you for asking. I would assume probably until like mid-April, which is usually when the normal farmers market starts up. So yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Feedback? Okay. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Hannah. I think we're ready for the main event. Beth Parker, Brigham Daniel, join us up front. Looks like we're getting your slides loaded. Thank you so much for being here. I think we've shared your bio widely, but it doesn't hurt to just re-hit some high points for the folks in the room. So please, yeah.
Okay. Brig, you start.
All right. So my name's Brig Daniels. I'm a professor of law at the University of Utah Law School. I focus my work on Great Salt Lake. Beth and I co-direct Great Salt Lake Project. The purpose of the project is to help Utahns answer the pressing question, how do we save Great Salt Lake? Go ahead, Beth. Why don't you just give a little...
I don't have much to add to that. I also am a professor of law up at the law school and have just had the privilege of working with Brig on this project for the past 4 years.
4 years in.
Yeah. And so anyway, just feel really lucky to be able to work on this project, and I'm really grateful to be here today. I see so many friends. So this is my old neighborhood. We moved about a year and a half ago to the north side of, the university, but I lived on Elray Street for 17 years, if you guys know where Elray Street is. So, yeah, so grateful to be here. And I think, okay, are we good?
It's gonna show them the note.
Unfortunately,
I can't swap back.
Do you want, with this happened, we presented the apps last week. Someone figured this out. Is there anybody who's good at IT? I'm not.
We have to rely on self-help IT, and unfortunately it goes by the initials.
Yeah.
It won't let me swap, and I can't see this screen.
Yeah.
So I guess that maybe we can do it.
Yeah.
This.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
It's okay.
If I can just find
We
them
can't
out.
get it set fine, but there are some apps that I think might be helpful.
It's an extended screen, but I don't understand where it is. So.
Oh, it thinks this is your second screen.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's a.
Yeah. That is something I definitely could never do. Like
It's the double screen was what we
Yeah.
wrote.
Luckily, we have our students that really help us with IT. So I'm going to go first. And Rachel, we have 30 minutes each, right? Okay. So keep me in line. Tell me when my 30 minutes is up. So I'm going to just move this out of the way. Are you okay if I? And hello to people online. Sorry for getting close. I know that there's a way.
It should, if it's not, if the screen's not, if the mouse is on it, it shouldn't do it, but.
Why don't you just start? I'll mess around with this.
So I have, first of all, again, it's so good to be here, to see familiar faces, and my mother-in-law's right here, Val Parker, and some dear friends. So good to be here, and I'm really grateful to be able to talk with you guys today about Great Salt Lake, and Brig is going to talk about solutions. But before we dig into the solutions, we have to get into the problem, because to come up with solutions, you have to understand the nature of the problem, right? This is like math or anything that we deal with in life. And so I have sort of the depressing, fatalistic job, and you might feel like, I need to run out of here in a half an hour. But don't do that, because Brig is going to breathe life back into the room, and hopefully we will end with some hope, knowing that it's going to take all of us, but we can do what has never been done before. Truly, we can be the first to save Saline Lake. So let's get into it. All right, maybe. Okay. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So by raise of hand, does everybody here know a little bit about what's going on at Great Salt Lake? Yeah. Okay. That's great. The tune has changed, because 4 years ago, and I'm right in the way, sorry. 4 years ago, that wasn't always the case. We didn't always get an affirmative answer. But the lake is actually, it has declined by over half. And we're talking volume and actual surface area. So the surface, you can see this time lapse here. The surface has shrunk over 55%. You can see from the high. We've had a 67%, almost 70% drop in water volume. Right now, we're sitting at 15 feet below the average, and this is the natural average. And this is the really crazy part. So our lake reached an all-time low. Our lake reached an all-time low in November of 2022. It dropped to 4188.5 feet above sea level. And today we are at, then this is the south arm. If you've seen pictures, the north arm is up here and the south arm is down here. The north arm is kind of the pink one that you see, and the south arm here, there's still brine flies and brine shrimp here. The south arm is at 4191.9. And how we look at it is the lake gets the lowest in November, and it's generally the highest in Mayish. And so what you want to do is you don't want to track February to November. So we want to see what was it in February of 2022. That was the year it reached its all-time low. February of 2022, we were at 4190.9. Today we're at 4191.9. We are 1 year, 1 foot above where we were in February of 2022. And with the winter we're having, we are on a path to potentially reach a new all-time low. We'll talk about what that entails in a little bit, but first, I want to talk a little bit about a global pattern of saline lake collapse around the world. So around the world, this is actually really cool. Lake volume around the world, 44% of the water in lakes around the world is found in saline lakes, in these terminal lakes. And how you get a terminal lake, you have to have generally a semi-arid basin. It can't be so arid that there's no water. It has to be semi-arid enough that there's enough water to cover some land like Great Salt Lake, but not so arid that the water is going to cut a channel to the ocean, because it's not so wet that it will cut a channel to the ocean, because if there's enough water, water always wants to find a way to the ocean. So these terminal lakes generally occur in a semi-arid location like Utah, and it's when you have water coming in, and then the only way out is through evaporation. So like I mentioned, there are about 120 major saline lakes throughout the world, and all are in some form of collapse or decline. You can see here, this is Lake Urmia in Iran, and look at the time lapse here. This is the Aral Sea. It's on the border of Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. We'll see some really scary pictures from the Aral Sea here. This is Lake Popo. About 20 years ago, quinoa got really popular, and the area around Lake Popo is really ripe for growing quinoa, and a lot of the water was diverted, and you can see what happened here. So there are similarities, and we'll talk about the reason for Great Salt Lake's decline in just a minute, but we have the same reasons, and I'm going to give you guys a quiz, so I'm not going to tell you what the reason is quite yet, although you probably already know, is leading to the decline of all of these lakes. And here's the thing. Once a major saline lake has started to decline or collapse, not a single one has been saved. The closest we have is Mono Lake or perhaps Pyramid Lake in Nevada. They're very different situations than Great Salt Lake. Mono Lake had one water user. It was LA, and you had a lawsuit there that said, oh, you can't take quite as much water. You can still take some, not quite as much, but the lake has still not been restored to healthy levels. And it's been about 40 years since that court case. I went out to Mono Lake last June, and I got to paddle around on it. There are these really cool tufas that used to be underwater. Now they're not. And there were some really big dust storms. And we'll talk a little bit more about dust from Mono Lake and another lake in a minute, but there are no examples. So what this means is we need to do what has never been done before. And I really, really think, and you'll hear from Brig, the optimistic part of this presentation, that Utah does have the tools, or we can create the tools in order to save our lakes. So let's look at some pictures of what does it look like when one of these lakes collapses. So this is Laguna Marchiquita here. This is in Argentina. And this actually is almost the size of Great Salt Lake now that Great Salt Lake has declined so much. Back when Great Salt Lake is at its natural level, Great Salt Lake is much bigger. But you can see there are farmlands up here, and this is a dust storm. It's going over all the farmlands. So it's ruining all those farmlands, let alone people's health here. This is the city of Uralsk, and this is off the Aral Sea. This is in Uzbekistan, and you can see picture here. This is the desiccated lake bed of the Aral Sea. So you can see fishing boats, and over 500,000 people had to evacuate this city. Some people are beginning to come back, It's kind of like a tourist destination to come and see it now. But there have been millions of cases of health problems associated with this dust. So these are the types of things that happen when one of these major lakes collapses. So one thing I like to say is I don't traffic in hyperbole. I'm not trying to be fatalistic or doomsayer. I'm just trying to tell it how it is. And when you see pictures like this, you can see, okay, this is why we should be worried, right? Because Salt Lake City and the whole Wasatch Front, we are right on the shores of Great Salt Lake. Okay, let's look a little closer to home. This is the Salton Sea. So you can see the dust coming across the Salton Sea and all the agricultural land here. And right now, there are about 42 diseases associated with dust that are being studied here. Oh no, I just gave my quiz away. Okay. Darn it. Okay, we'll quiz the second one. All right. As most of you know, what are the major causes for the lake's decline, right? There are three major causes, and you guys saw this, so I won't quiz you on it. The most major cause is human water use. 80% of the problem, 80% of the reason that the lake is declining is because of human water use. 10% is climate change. And we expect that to get a little bit higher as climate change worsens, right? And then 10% is drought. So despite the really, really great year we had a couple of years ago, and then the good year we had after that, we are still in the throes of a mega drought. I think we're 26 years in, is that right? About 26 years into a mega drought. And so all of these combine to decrease Great Salt Lake and the levels in the lake. But since human water use is the largest, we're going to dig into this for a little while. And Greg and I, we both teach water law, kind of depending on the semester. And we spend a lot of time talking about human water depletions and human water diversions and different laws and systems that go into it. And let's get into human water use. So first, I'm going to use the word depletion a lot. What this means is human consumption of water that would otherwise go to a natural system like Great Salt Lake. So, and it doesn't go back into the system. So it's used up by crops, it's evaporated. That's what we're talking about when we talk about depletions. So when we're talking about human depletions from the tributaries that would otherwise feed Great Salt Lake, there are a few categories. And I'm going to ask you guys, since I'm a professor, I love quiz. And so let's see how much we know about the human depletion cause of Great Salt Lake's decline. Okay, so there are a few buckets of human depletions. One is municipal and industrial. So what are our factories doing? What are we doing here in our cities, in our homes? We had Hannah here with Salt Lake City, right? Did I get Hannah? Okay. And then we also have agricultural, right? And then we have some mining, so mineral extraction. And then there's some incidental losses, some evaporation. So who thinks that the major cause of depletion is municipal and industrial usage? Oh, this is amazing. Okay, what about mining, mineral extraction? Uses a lot of water. Agriculture. All right. Okay, you guys got it. Here's the deal, though. We just found something out with the latest study from the Strike Team report that is, it's a bunch of universities and experts come together and talk about the science related to the lake. For a long time, we thought agricultural depleted about 80%, was 80% of the problem when it came to human depletions. And that municipalities and industry was maybe like 16%, 16.7%. Well, they'd only been studying a few years. They expanded their data and they actually found that municipal and industrial use actually accounts for 26% of the depletion. That's a lot more than we thought. And agricultural water use is 65%, not, the 77% that we thought it was. And then mining stayed about the same, 6%. And if you think it doesn't add up, it's because some evaporation and like 1% for incidental losses. But what this means is, listen, it's always mattered what we do here in our backyards. But in light of these new numbers, we know that it matters even more. And we can do a lot. I'm going to take questions at the end. Is that okay? Is that okay? Okay. All right. So, but please do remember it. So you ask. I think we have, Rachel, time questions, right? Afterwards. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Hey, we'll tighten it. We'll tighten it. Okay. Okay. I'll try to end in 10 minutes. Okay. So let's look at our human depletions by sector. So you can't read this, but what you can see is agricultural usage has kind of remained steady over the past 30 years. In the 90s, it was, this is all in, we're not going to go into what this is. Let's talk about this because I'm going to try to condense. So this is the levels of the lake here. And these are types of human use. So here we have agricultural use. So you can see the levels of the lake really do track agricultural use, right? And what you can see here is that agricultural use really hasn't changed a whole lot over the last 30 years. And then here we have municipal and industrial. What we see here, agricultural use is starting to go down. Municipal use is starting to go up, right? And that makes sense with how Utah is growing. And so you can see here that that's the second highest amount, and that tracks. And then we have a reservoir evaporation here, and then some mineral extraction is the yellow one. And you can see here, I don't know if you guys can see it, but for agricultural incidental losses, we aren't going to look at that. We aren't going to look at reservoir. But for municipal use, you can see it's gone up. As has mineral extraction, but Brig is going to talk about a recent acquisition that might change the calculation there. Okay, I have a few graphs, and I think we're going to just pass these by. If you want this, let me know, and I'm happy to share it with you. What this shows is that water usage and the type of water usage changes depending on where you live. If you live up by the Bear River, and the Bear River watershed accounts for about 40% of the depletion, most of that usage is in agriculture. Agriculture is blue, municipal is orange. If you get into Utah Lake Basin, you can see agricultural water use is the most, but look at that, municipal use is trending upward, right? Weber Basin, what do you guys think about Weber Basin? These lines have crossed. So you can see ag use is down, municipal use is up as farms turn into neighborhoods. What about where we are? Jordan River Basin. Where do you think? Not a lot of farms here anymore. I grew up in farm country in South Jordan. It used to be farm country. It's not anymore. So look at this. This is mainly municipal usage. And you can see we're in the thousands here. We're in the low hundreds here. So Bear River definitely uses the most water, but this is just really interesting, I think, to see how we're using our water. The next thing, do you guys think that it matters more how much you water your lawn or how long showers you take? Showers? Okay. Take a shorter shower for the lake. Lawn. Let's look at this. Okay. It is outdoor. It does. I mean, you would have to shower a lot, but this is an outdoor use problem. So this is indoor depletions. Outdoor depletions, and we're talking residential outdoor depletions, they account for 96% of the depletion from the lake. So it really is what we do outside. And if we were just to water our lawns, the requisite amount, what they require, it would go down so much. We would save so much water, let alone if we had this water line. I want to show this there. This is where I grew up. Look at all these lawns. This is in South Jordan. There's actually an alfalfa field right behind here. When I grew up, an alfalfa field used to be right here. This is my house growing up, and that's a half an acre. It used to take me about 3.5 hours to mow. And that's a lot of water that gets used, right? We rarely use our whole lawn. Lest we think that we're better than South Jordan here in Salt Lake. Oh no, did you delete it? Okay, it's okay. So there's something that looks a lot like this. It's just right in our own backyard, right? And it's probably good he deleted it because we're trying to, trying to condense a little bit. But outdoor water use is a problem. So why does it matter? Why does it matter? Well, we had a law student a couple years ago who we always start. So I teach air pollution. Greg and I both teach water law. He teaches a slew of other environmental classes. And then we both have run an environmental policy accelerator class at the law school for the last 3 years. And we run that every semester. And the students do real Great Salt Lake work. And 2 years ago, we had this student, Andy. She's wonderful. And when we asked this question, why does it matter? She said, because it's my damn home. That's why it matters. And that's why we're here today, right? It matters to all of us for different reasons. For me, it's very personal. I have 4 asthmatic children. One of my daughters, I get a call probably every other week to come and get her because she's had 2 asthma attacks at school. And if you have 2, you have to go home. If you have 1, you can stay. I also have girls that row on Utah Crew, and they row on the lake in the spring and the fall. But guess what? They are not rowing on the lake this spring. They couldn't row on the lake in 2022 or 2023. That means they have to go to their spring regattas, and they have not been on the water. So why else does it matter? Let's get into it. So this is what we want to see in the air above the lake. These are birds. We don't want to see dust. We want to see this. But you can see here, some of our islands, Antelope Island, Gunnison Island, are no longer islands because of the depletion. And this is very problematic. So Great Salt Lake is the largest lake in the Western Hemisphere. It is a gem. We are so lucky to have Great Salt Lake. And it's what we call a keystone ecosystem. It's critical habitat for many, many, many species. Over 12 million migratory birds are part of the Pacific Flyway. They fly from Canada all the way down to Argentina and actually every single state in the United States. And when the lake dips down, they no longer have places to lay their eggs. Coyotes come, they eat their eggs, they eat them. Gunnison Island used to be a haven for pelicans, time immemorial. And in 2023, there was 0. So if you see the Sundance movie, The Lake, you're going to see some really haunting images. I see some nods. Some people have seen it, of pelicans. Also, when the salinity goes up, we see brine fly population go down, brine shrimp begin to die. The birds have nothing to eat. So ecological reasons. This is one of the reasons we should care. Why else? Okay, many of you have heard about dust, right? So the first slide I showed that the lake had contracted and 55% of the water volume, not the volume, that's 67%, but of the surface area, it has shrunk by 55%. What this means is as it shrinks, it exposes the lake bed. And when it dries out, we call this playa. And right now there are over 800 square miles of exposed playa. That's larger than the size of Maui. And what happens is when the wind blows across that playa, it blows the dust and everything that's in that sediment, that's been in that sediment for millions of years, thousands of years, or hundreds of years that we've deposited there. But natural and also anthropogenic things in that playa, it blows to the surrounding communities. Now, we have 2.6 million people along the Wasatch Front. We're direct downwinders. But here's the thing about air pollution. So when I teach my air pollution class, I always start the first day talking about the health effects of air pollution. Now, air pollution is called the silent killer. And the reason it's called the silent killer is because it's not on a death certificate. You don't say air pollution. You have heart disease, right? You have cancer. You have asthma. And of the 11 million environmentally caused deaths in the world, so we're not talking hurricanes, we're not talking natural disasters, we're talking dirty water, we're talking like chemical spills, and we're talking dirty air. There are 11 million a year. 7 of the 11 million are due to air pollution. Air pollution is a huge deal. And breathing dust is so problematic. Breathing the cleanest dust is very harmful for our physiology. But we know that our dust, it's compounded. It's not clean dust. And we know this because of a hero named Kevin Perry. He's a dear friend of ours at the University of Utah. He's an atmospheric scientist. And in 2018, he got a grant to go and study the playa of
Great Salt Lake, and on this heavy bike, I've seen it, heavy bike with a heavy trailer, he biked every square mile of that 800 square miles of exposed playa. He was shot at. He was caught in lightning storms. He risked his life. But what he did is he was tasked with testing the playa for heavy metals to see if it would be a good site for a prison. Well, what he found is that there are a lot of heavy metals in this playa, and that every square mile of the playa has some form of really harmful heavy metals. And all of these red spots, you guys have probably heard about the arsenic. These all show, he said every square mile had arsenic, but all of these areas are where arsenic exceeded EPA limits. Now, there are EPA limits for arsenic for residential EPA limits and industrial EPA limits, like, ooh, you shouldn't put a factory there. There's too much arsenic. Many of these exceeded industrial EPA limits. They all exceeded EPA residential limits. So not only are we breathing dust, which is really bad, we're breathing dust laden with heavy metals. But here's the thing. When I asked Kevin, what else is in there? He said, well, Beth, when you test for heavy metals, you have to cook it so hot, you cook everything else out. We don't know what else is in there, but we know there's a lot of other bad stuff. So we talk about the heavy metals, but we're breathing a lot of other junk. These two, if you see the lake, you'll actually see this movie right here put to wind. And I should have had like a wind sound. It's actually really effective. These were taken right by the University of Utah. This dust is covering where we live, right? And the thing about dust is there are smaller particles that come off the lake and larger particles. So PM 2.5 and PM 10. PM 10, it's really bad to breathe. It falls out in a few hours. PM 2.5, also really bad to breathe, even worse to breathe. Well, they're different. They're both bad. But it can stay in the air for weeks until it rains, snows, or wind blows it out. So it's a huge problem. It also can travel hundreds of miles. Dust from the Sahara has been found on the eastern United States and in Texas. So this is not just a Wasatch Front problem. This is not just a Tooele problem or a Magna problem. This is an all of Wasatch Front problem, an all of Utah problem. And it is not only a national problem, but a global problem. Now, some of the issues with dust, this was taken in the foothills, actually, the foothills right above the Capitol. And this is on when there's a dust event coming off the lake. This is in Provo, a day there's a dust event coming off Great Salt Lake. And we don't have time to go over all of these, but this is 41 diseases that have been shown to be caused by drying lakes. And it's not just respiratory diseases. You can see cancers, infectious diseases, cardiovascular diseases, heart problems, psychological problems, eye problems. So I have adult onset asthma. I grew up here. I had an early cataract. Look at this. I had a cataract in my 30s. And that's on there. So you guys, this is a real problem. We are living this. Okay. Cautionary tale. There is this lake. Oh, Greg, can I go till 7:30? And then, okay. There's this lake called Owens Lake. And this is in California. It's 15 times smaller than Great Salt Lake. Yet since the 80s, it has been this largest single source of particulate matter for that larger particulate, PM10, in the nation. So imagine if Great Salt Lake were to desiccate. That's 15 times larger. This is just one dust event. It looks like a nuclear bomb. And many of us started to become more concerned about Great Salt Lake when we read a New York Times article, right, in January of 2023, entitled Potential Environmental Nuclear Bomb, right? And here you can see it. And this is from a much smaller lake. If you have not read the book Cadillac Desert, I would highly suggest it. I have my water loss kids read a few of the chapters, and it is such a good book. It will give you a detailed story about this. We're not going to go over this, but you can see when the dust falls onto our snow, you get an albedo effect. It's just like driving a black car in the sun instead of a white car. The snow is going to melt much faster. But here's one thing I want to talk about, and then I'll just kind of go through the rest really, really quickly in 1 minute and pass it over. And so we know about the lake effect snow, right? We know that the snow contributes to about 15% of the lake contributes to about 15% of our snowpack and contributes to our light, fluffy powder, which is the greatest snow on Earth. I used to be a ski instructor at Snowbird, so I really think we have the greatest snow on Earth. Well, there's a new study, and this is pretty terrifying, out of Utah State. And this study shows that Great Salt Lake is responsible for 50% of regional precipitation. And as Great Salt Lake declines, regional precipitation declines. It's not just up in the mountains, it's all over. And if the lake were to go away completely, to desiccate completely, our regional precipitation would decrease by 50%, turning Great Salt Lake into Wendover. And I don't know about you guys, turning Salt Lake into Wendover. And I don't know about you guys, but I want Salt Lake to stay Salt Lake. I don't want it to look like Wendover. Okay. I'm going to go past this. This talks about some of the economic effects, that, the impacts don't just stop at dust and health and ecology, and precipitation, but there are going to be real economic fallout, and a real bottom line will be impacted. And so, this is my ending slide. Right now, we find ourselves a foot above where we were, in February of 2022, and we have combined that with the lowest snowpack on record. So you can see here's our snowpack, and here's where we are now. We're at the lowest snowpack on record. February is not looking great. We were supposed to have an enormous storm today, right? Up in the mountains, and we did get some snow. This is Park City in late December. These are two pictures. We did a little hike, on Christmas Day from my house. And if someone were to show me this picture, I'd say, oh, that's probably like June. That is Christmas. And you can see there was a dust event off the lake. Can you guys see the dust there? And you can see the dust flowing all the way up here. One of my kids, who normally doesn't have asthma attacks, had a really bad asthma attack as we were out in the dust. So anyway, I'm sorry to sort of be a downer here, but it's really important that we see reality, because what we have to realize is we don't live in England, right? And we are going to need to change the way we live, not drastically, but we're going to have to change some things if we want to have a lake. And do we want to have a lake? Well, I do, because I want to be able to stay here and live. So, with that.
I have a question though.
Yeah.
Any other questions about this before? Yeah.
The bottom line is you answered it.
Okay.
That's good. I think.
Okay. And I'm happy to talk to you too afterward. So Brig is here to talk about how are things going.
Hold on. This is the question we get a lot. And thank you to our firefighters. And thank you for your report. We're so grateful for you. So grateful for you. Thank you. So here is, maybe just kind of start at the big picture. When we start thinking about how the legislative session is going, one of the things I'll just kind of focus in on is, we've never actually saved a lake like this. And actually, if we're going to, it's going to be the largest dedication of water to environmental purposes for any purpose in the United States ever. In fact, if you take all of the water dedicated for environmental purposes across the country, it will probably be more water that we need in our little valley than we've done across the country. Now, why is that? Because most of the time when we're trying to save water for environmental purposes, you think about it's a river, dry summer, driest month, driest stretch, and that's where we need to focus on getting the water. We have a really different problem, right? It doesn't matter if we get the water in the wettest year or the driest year, the wettest month. It's a different problem, but it will require more water than any other environmental dedication of water anywhere in the country. And I think anywhere in the world. I'm very confident of that. The other thing to kind of say about this before we start in on this is that we're basically living in a world in which we've got a very expensive payday loan. And every year that interest is building as we're getting more and more in the deficit. Once we're able to get on top of that, we're going to have a lot more water that we can use for various purposes. But if you think about it, like if somebody's really heavily into debt and they say, well, I'm just going to pay the minimum payment on the credit card every month. That's not the way to get out. The way to get out is dedicate yourself to doing something now and big. That's the way to get on top of it. And once we do, we're going to have a lot more water in the system. Until we do, we're going to have the problem that Beth has talked about. And if we do just a little bit at a time, literally, our gains will evaporate away from the system. We really need to hustle. And here's the reality check before I talk about the session. We're not even close.
We are not close. Okay. Now, this was the best month I had in a long time when Governor Cox and the legislative leadership and a whole bunch of philanthropists came together and they signed something called the Great Salt Lake Charter. They promised that they would restore the lake to healthier levels by the Olympics and then restore it for generations to come. And, in large part why I was excited about this is the announcement that with the help of private philanthropy in the state, we were going to have dedicated, by the time the Olympics comes here, $200 million to save the lake, which, just to give you some perspective, last year, Brian Steed's office got $1.6 million. This year, Brian Steed's office got $5 million. So when you say you got $200 million, that's something really to cheer about. This made me very, very happy. And the way that we're going to save the lake is basically we're going to be looking for volunteers, but in a very specific way. Some of you might be volunteers already. You may say, I've torn out my grass. Some of you may torn out part of your grass. You're a real volunteer. But what we're looking for is, are there people out there who would be willing to do more if we paid them some more? Right? Would you be willing to tear out grass if the city paid you? Would you be willing to tear out alfalfa or use water, maybe one cut fewer of alfalfa if the state paid you, right? We're going to be looking for volunteers who are willing to respond to that market incentive, and you need money if you're going to have a market incentive. You can't say, we're going to basically require all of our changes to be like if we pay people and then not have money to pay. So the money is super, super important. It's then the missing ingredient. Also, one of the things that was very positive about this thing is, everyone who's been kind of fighting and kind of going off to their own corner and saying, it's the farmer's fault, and the farmers say, no, it's the city's fault, whatever. Everyone stood together and said, we're going to do it. We might need to have some regulations, but that's just kind of a gap filler when necessary. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. That's sort of the context that we're heading into the session with. So I want to talk about a few bills that are currently before the legislature that are super important. They're also pretty boring, but let me explain to you why they're important, if I can. So I want to talk about three big problems that the state is working on. And this is the most important one because this is the one that they're actually solving the best. And it's the one that needs to be solved the most if we're going to rely on individual market volunteers. And that is, my spouse has a little shop. It's over by Feldman's called Knitting Hive. Yeah, I don't know if any of you know it, but at any rate, it's a pretty good location because there's a lot of people around the area knit. If you can imagine her saying, no, I actually want to go, I've got a better price for rent up in the Ochre Mountains, and it's a 12-mile hike to get in. Right? The shop, no matter how great it is, it's going to fail. If you're going to rely on markets, it can't be a pain in the butt. It's got to be easy. It's got to be easy. And if you think about what we're asking particularly farmers to do, we're asking farmers to say, I know that you say this is your livelihood. I know you say this is your lifestyle. I know that you say this is even your heritage. Can you do it less? And if you can convince that person to say yes, then you say, okay, let's drop the deal. What would it take? And we drop the deal. And then we go and say, perfect, great. We drop off an application to make that change to the lake, and it takes about a year. That doesn't work. That does not work. Most of our changes in water law, it can take a year because most things you're not trying to do immediately. But if you're a farmer right now, you're saying, should I plant or should I sell my water right now? I can make a decision right now. I can't make a decision a year from now. So we need to be able to move that quickly. HB 438 and HB 410 rebuilds that engine. We're basically using the engine of a Model T right now. This gives us like a 1984 Camaro. We would love to have a model Ferrari. We're not going to get one, but this is good. This is a good car. This is a fast car. It will work. And I'm super excited about it. A Republican from Ogden named Jill Covert is sponsoring these bills, 348 and 410. Super boring, but those are the most important. And particularly for all of these, philanthropists that said, we're going to give the money. If they can't close the deal, the money isn't going to be helpful. This is super helpful. Second thing that we've talked about here, there are two bills, and I'll talk about them kind of both. One was House Bill 5, which is already passed, and it's actually kind of done without really any public comment or anything else. It was just an opportunity that the state came up and they passed it almost immediately. And then 410 is the other, it's still that same bill that I was talking about. So what 410 does is basically says we're going to give Brian Steed, who's a commissioner of Great Salt Lake, $5 million a year on an ongoing basis to buy water from farmers. Now, $5 million a year is not what we need. We need something like $5 billion a year. So the 200 million that have been pledged, that's like 4% of the problem. Maybe just take away a few zeros. Pretend like we need $5,000 and we've pledged $4. That's kind of what we've done, right? So we're just barely starting. But here's the thing. $5 billion is not a terrible, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. But the Salt Lake International Airport was $5 billion. Rebuilding I-15 is like $3 billion. Like, if we decide this is an important thing, we can get the money. We might have to do it with federal cooperation. We might have to do it with philanthropy. But $5 billion protects trillions of dollars of assets, including my house and yours. If somebody came to me and said, look, you got this problem with your house and your health and everything else. Look, I just need, it's a $500,000 house. I need like $5,000 now. And I want, or actually over 20 years, I need $5,000. Can you do that for your house and your health? Yes, please. It's the best insurance policy I could have bought. We need to think about this as an investment. This isn't a bleeding heart cause. This is what we do when we take our home seriously. This is a shrewd investment. And part of the problem that we have right now in our politics is like, I don't want your doomerism. I don't want your wokeism. I don't either. I just want my home. And we just have to be able to communicate that to others. But this $5 million that we've got, here's the thing. We're just barely starting to get farmers to make deals. Beth and I are actually writing leases for some of these farmers. We're trying to help them make these transfers. Now, here's the thing about it. We could think about this as way too little, way too late, but it also may be the opening of the floodgates. Like if you can show, if there is money, the farmers show up and they sell. That's how we actually make a market work. So I'm excited about this. The last thing I'll get to is a little bit of money that was $30 million. This was a bargain basement price. We were able to secure a lot of money. I don't know how many of you have heard about the purchase of U.S. Magnesium. U.S. Magnesium for years has been one of the biggest polluters in the country and Utah's biggest pollutant by far. And it's a polluted site that the state actually has liability to clean up because they've been leasing that land in that core for a long time. So they had environmentally, the environmental law says you're on the hook to clean it up anyway, but they also use a lot of water. So here, let me just tell you, we were able to secure about 80,000 acre feet, which I know doesn't mean anything to you, but here is a way to think about it. It's 125 square miles, 1 foot of water. That's a lot of water. And we were able to buy it, not rent it, lease it. This is enormous. Now, the problem is, so is Great Salt Lake. When Great Salt Lake is full, it's almost 2,000 square miles. So this is inches where we need feet, but hell, it was a great deal. And we had the environmental liability anyway. one of the very best investments we can imagine. It really, we wouldn't have been able to get it, but for the land being so polluted that everybody else who was bidding had to think, do I want to bid for the water and the liability that the state already has, right? So that it was a very, very smart deal. Now, here's kind of one way to think about the money. $200 million pledged by private philanthropy, $5 million ongoing, $30 million for U.S. Magnesium. That's the amount of money that we have on the table. We need at least that much and probably a lot more every year for at least the next, that pace, probably like, I don't know, 15, 20 years. If we want to save the thing by the Olympics, we really got to get aggressive. It is possible. It is possible. But let's just say, I was talking to one of you, and I'm sorry, I won't single you out. But we said something a friend said to me a long time ago, and it's really stuck with me. I know that this is a serious problem. Serious people are thinking about it. Yes. And I think that we've got it licked. No, we don't. The adults are not at the table yet. One of the reasons we do these presentations is to get people aware that you all have a role as citizens, as business owners, as employees, as neighbors, as parents, as whatever it is your role is. How we're going to do this is everybody has to decide, this is worth doing. It's not impossible. The cost of the airport, if we don't say that, like that airport is done anyway, we're going to have to buy a new airport wherever we move. Like, this is a sensible investment. We just have to see it. Okay, last thing. These have been very, very small. HB 328 and HB 155. Basically, what these things are doing is trying to get at the urban water use. And I just want to talk about our outdoor water use. So, is your name Sarah? Okay. Sarah was saying the showers, and depends on the length of the shower, is an important thing. Think about it this way. Everything that goes down the drain, we're going to treat, and most of it is going to go to the lake. Take a long shower. Take multiple showers. Beth has told her kids, you flush once for yourself and twice for the lake. Right? Indoor water consumption is not the problem. The only thing that I've heard this entire time that alarmed me about the lost possibility is the kids who are peeing at Laird Park. Go into the bathroom and flush it so it gets to the lake. We need it. We need it, kids. Now, here is just something that, this is a slide that the commissioner often shows, which is, here's how much water, if we're just going to have grass in our cities, here's how much water we need to actually keep the lawns that we have water, and here's how much water we use. Most frequently, when you have a brown spot on your lawn, it is not due to lack of water. If it is due to lack of water, just kill that thing right there and just say, we're going to put a drought-tolerant plant right here. Everything else we're going to water. But we don't have to change radically, but we have to change.
What's an example of an unmetered system?
Secondary water, there's not a lot of it in Salt Lake City, but if you have like one of my neighbors in my old neighborhood used to water their lawn by flood irrigating it. And why would they do that? Because they just could open the floodgates and it was just easier, right? And so that's even a higher possibility of trying to. When we use the water outside, that water evaporates. We want that water, we say rise and brine. We want that water to make it to the lake and sit there and get salted. That's what we want, right? That's what we want. Just a couple of things. This is a very interesting thing, dust suppression. And I'll leave just 5 minutes for questions. Is that okay, Rachel? So this is a really interesting study that came out about 6 hours ago. And as I came in, I was talking to the author of the study. His name's Kevin Perry, who Beth's already mentioned, the Magellan of Great Salt Lake. He's the one that rode his bike around. Here's the thing about Kevin. He studied what would it take to actually suppress the dust. What would it take? Now, he came up and said, we currently have 70 square miles of dust hotspots. The problem is if we don't treat those, they get bigger. But if we just treated the 70 miles that we have, how much would it cost over a period of 50 years? And in today's dollars, it's going to cost somewhere between 3.2 billion and 31 billion. Now, here's the thing about those dust hotspots is you don't get to choose this. It's going to be a mixture of things. So sometimes you're putting gravel or rocks. Sometimes you're putting hay bales out. Sometimes you're putting troughs. Sometimes you're planting plants. And not everything can be done in every place. It's going to be sort of a mixed bag. But this is the lowest strategy of like, we were lucky enough that all of our strategies could just be growing plants, but they can't mostly. Maybe on some of the higher dust it can, but on the lower you can't. But this is the higher end. Now, the thing that I've noticed about these numbers is $5 billion is a deal if the only problem is just suppressing the dust, which actually the federal government under the Clean Air Act is probably eventually going to force us. How do we know that the federal government is going to force us to do this? Well, assuming that the EPA and the Clean Air Act actually exists in a few years, which I understand sometimes feels questionable, but if it is actually still exists, here's the thing. They regulate Owens Lake. They regulate Mona Lake. They regulate the Salton Sea. Why? Because they're some of the biggest pollution sources in the entire United States. Great Salt Lake is almost there. It will actually cost less money, Kevin estimates, to secure Farmington Bay alone than it would be to save the lake. Let's save the lake. Let's just do it. Let's decide that this is a priority, and let's decide to do it. It is possible. It is possible. I want to make it very, very clear. This is one of these things. It's kind of an off-color show, and I'm sorry to bring it up. I don't want to offend anybody. Has anybody seen the show Arrested Development? There's a guy named Tobias in Arrested Development who ends up getting quite sick because he got hair plugs. Now, he can actually be killed if he just stops with the hair plugs. And he just says, well, I'm not going to do it. That's kind of the world in which we're in. Like, we just have to decide we're going to play it smart. We can do this. But it will take all of us. What can you do? What can you do? Number one, take responsibility for where you are. And, I'm not saying tear out your grass, but if the only time you use a portion of your grass is when you walk on it to mow it, think about it. Think about it. Is it going to be a pain in the butt to get it out of? Yes. Will it come back every year? Probably for a bit. Is it going to be pleasant? No, it's not. But could you do something? Maybe. But even if you don't, just imagine watering less and maybe letting your lawn die a little earlier. You don't have to water all the way until October, right? Every drop counts. Second thing you can do, call your representatives. HB 410, HB 348. We need these bills. Lastly, here's the thing. We come to these sorts of things so that we can hopefully orient folks to thinking about, we can change this. Like, my goodness, look at what you all can do. Like, you all can organize, right? This doesn't have to be your only conversation, but make it part of your conversation. Help people understand what they can do. A little bit, if we all decide we can do it, we can whip this problem. If we don't, we will be whipped by this problem. This is an existential problem that we can fix. Let's fix it. All right, that's all we got. And I think we're out of time. We have time for 2 minutes of questions. Yes, sir.
So when push comes to shove, and the governor really cares about this, could we not implement eminent domain to just take the water rights away from the
Sure. We're gonna have to pay for it anyway, though. Eminent domain, you have to pay.
Sure. But
Yeah.
why don't we just like skip all this name and be like, we're gonna make volunteers and,
Look, I would like,
just let them check, say, thanks, good.
yeah,
luck.
I agree. You could do this, but the point of it is, we still have to pay for it. If we decide where we try to play, where Beth and I try to play is, we've stopped trying to identify how would we solve it if it was us. And we're trying to say, how might you all solve it, legislature? I think getting more money to actually experiment with markets, like that might be, like if that works, great. If people don't want to sell, I think that's really good information, right? Then we might have to think about the next step.
If I could just add one thing on that. So we have a friend, a law professor who works with us some on Great Salt Lake issues, and she's in Oregon. She says, well, why don't you just regulate it
Right.
and use eminent domain? And I said, well, listen,
Yeah.
we aren't in Oregon.
Well, but regulation. Here's something to talk about to your neighbors. Regulation can save us hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars. We could, if we decided collectively that it was worth doing this, we could save ourselves in tax dollars hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. Just to give you, if we can figure out just a way to, like, just 2%, that's the $200 million that the foundations have pledged. We can, if we just have to decide, let's make that part of the conversation. Yeah.
With that $5 billion we need to show where I can find more information on where that number is coming from.
It's a Utah State study. The chief author of it is Richter. That's the big study. The estimates have come in somewhere between 2 and 10. The Richter study puts it at about 5, with the low end of perhaps 2. But Richter is the name of the author. It's a Utah State authored study.
Pay people off. Is there
Exactly.
a portion of that for innovation?
Innovation is a form of, like, so this is a complicated question, and I love it. It didn't really take that into account. Innovation could be a better deal, right? A sprinkler system that tells you don't need to water, that might be the cheapest way to do it. I think the thing that we need to start thinking about it is that way. Let's think about it like investors, and how do we do this problem the most logical, cheapest way? That is the way I want to do this if I could choose. But Richard was thinking about just farm. Yes, Sarah, last one for you.
Talk about the Utah's program to pay people to get rid of their lawns.
Yeah, so there is something called Flip the Strip. In Salt Lake City, you get they have additional subsidies. This is a chronically underfunded program. I mean, but here's the thing, and this is the last word on this one. We need to start helping our city understand that when we save water, it wasn't just for funsies. It was to save Great Salt Lake. Conserving the water does us no good unless we also dedicate the water. We're currently not doing that. Can you all help us with the chairs? We're out of time.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
We have incredible resources. We'll get the slides up on our site. All of the links. Remember, this is the perfect time to be calling your legislators.
If it's recorded and going to be available.
Yeah. Yes, we'll post it. Thank you. So much, you guys.